Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. My name is Mike Langford, and welcome back to another episode of DearBands Live, the podcast that explores the paths and stories of career-minded artists and music industry professionals. If you're joining us on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe to help support the channel. My guest today, one of North America's most in-demand drummers with a sound and style that combines power and finesse, leading to performances on well over 100 records. The list of artists he's worked with reads like a who's who of the music industry, including Paramore, Justin Bieber, Chantal Kreviazuk, Dallas Green, Rae Jepsen, and Treble Charger. Current member of diamond-selling and Juno Award-winning rock band Our Lady Peace. Please welcome our guest today, Jason Pierce. Jason.
Hey, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. It has been a while.
As COVID times, right?
Definitely. How's things going, speaking of?
Good. We just finished a run of, I think, 8 or 9 Canadian shows. We have, I think, another 4 weeks off, and then we start an American run, which is another 8 or 9 shows, I think, before Christmas.
It's an American run.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. It's kind of like an undersold tour, so we're doing like smaller venues than we usually do. So it's going to be, it's going to be something. I'm looking forward to getting out of this country and back into the States at least,
Touring, we can get there. Touring in the States is very, very different than touring in Canada.
Totally.
Geographically, logistically.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everything's just so... Well, in 2019, we did a tour with Bush and Live. And we ended up probably going back and forth 5 or 6 times, like across the States. And that's kind of something that doesn't... Sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's something that doesn't really happen in Canada, I find. I find in Canada, you kind of like, you have your route and you do your tour, but you're not like zigzagging back and forth over like a period of 4 months.
Well, definitely, yeah, because you're probably not driving out to like Calgary and then back to, Brandon, Manitoba, and then like Winnipeg. And then, it just doesn't make any sense.
Like that old like dartboard tour term.
Just on that tip too, just like what was it? We talked about it briefly before we started went live, but the idea of like the beginning of 2020, things just came to a screeching halt. What was it like getting back on stage, or I guess even getting back in a rehearsal space with the band?
It was a little scary, to be honest. I was nervous just even going into rehearsal, being like, it's been so long since I've played drums with another human being. Like, it was such a surreal experience to, play songs with other humans. Through lockdowns and everything like that, being OLP, half of the band lives in Los Angeles and the other half lives in Toronto. But through all the lockdowns and everything like that, Duncan wouldn't even come over here and I wouldn't go see Duncan. So we went like a huge amount of time where it was just Zoom calls and like texting. So, having that human connection in any way was just not a thing,
We were chatting about that last week too, the idea of when you're a musician and you are playing, but then you get in the room and that energy, it's different.
Oh, it's completely different.
Just how massive that is and like how much it was missed. Yeah,
man. Yeah, we ended up doing an entire record remote through the lockdown, which was crazy. Like, absolutely crazy. Just recording drums on my own and like sending them through WeTransfer and waiting like 2 days to be like, does the producer like this? Or am I like, like never touching the mics, leaving everything exactly how it is because I might have to jump back in. Like,
did you, or where did you record the drums for it?
In my house. I have a live room on the other side of my house that is separated. So yeah, like luckily I set myself up in 2019 to be able to, live through this. But like,
no, just not to skip too far. I've got my laundry list of things that I wanted to bring up. But one of those things too, it's like last year, it forced so many musicians to figure out how to work remotely, how to work online, how to record themselves. But you've produced some records, you've produced some songs, you've worked with some artists. So you've been on both sides of the glass. So the idea of like having to say, oh, we need to work remotely, it's like you've already developed the skill set for it.
Yeah, it's just kind of like implementing it.
Well, yeah, but it's like there's a steep learning curve, especially when it comes to drums. You know,
Totally.
and it's like, but you've already gone through that. So the idea of how last year was throwing a lot of people into the fire, it's like, well, you still already had that skill set.
Totally. Yeah. Like, luckily, I had set myself up for that. Like, it could have been worse, you know. But
It was worse for, I think, a good number of people that didn't have any experience hitting record, let
Totally.
alone trying to mic up a drum kit and go, do I
there's
know
so
what
many
I'm
nuances,
doing?
man. Like, like there's so much to it. Like,
Yeah, and sometimes you don't figure that out until you get far enough down the line. You're like, oh, we should have done that differently.
yeah, and then you have to go back to the beginning again. Like,
No, I didn't realize that the new OLP record, but a lot of it was done. I guess you're saying like the majority of it was done remotely.
yeah, all except for "Stupid People," which is our current single, which we released a couple months ago. That song we actually recorded in the. I think it was the summer of 2019. We were down in LA and we met up with our producer, Dave Siddick, at his studio and actually worked on that one more as a band. But the rest of the record was basically us submitting demos to each other, picking the songs we wanted to record, and then like doing it all remote. So it's just like, it ended up being a lot slower than you would think it should be. And it was more just kind of like a challenge to find inspiration off each other remotely. Like, it was a completely different animal than sitting in the same room with everyone, you know?
Well, yeah, you're in the room together. You can just bounce ideas off each other quickly.
Yeah, it's instant.
And with online and remote sometimes, because like it's one thing to be able to chime in and see each other and make, make suggestions, but like often you get the songs and then you send it and then you wait. And then they send it and then they wait. So yeah, it can definitely be a little bit I don't want to say slower in a bad way, but it just takes a little bit extra time with sending things around.
Totally. And with like different time zones and stuff like that. And one of our producers that we were working with, he's Rick Rubin's engineer. So he was like in Maui or something making a record at the same time, but he had to like quarantine. So he was quarantining working on our stuff before he went to work on a different record and stuff like that. It's just loopy, you know?
You're right. Time zones is another thing, because if you're on West Coast time and you're on, there's a 3-hour difference there.
Yeah.
So
totally.
when someone's, up and at them at like 11, in the morning, it's still a little bit early for someone else. Someone else is working at 8 p.m. on the West Coast. It'd be getting a bit late for people in Toronto. So no, I definitely hear you with that.
Oh, dude. But like, luckily, like Rain is a father of 3 and a total adult. So he gets up in the morning and works. Like, even this morning, I was practicing drums at 9 a.m. and I saw he downloaded some files I sent him last night. And I'm like, it's 6 a.m. in LA. What are you doing at your computer downloading files? Like, good on you. Like,
sometimes we work when we can, sort of thing.
Totally.
You find the time.
Yeah. And like, as a parent too, that's kind of one thing I had to learn. Being like, my freedom of having time to be able to go to my studio and do whatever I want just wasn't there anymore. So it's like, nap time, get maybe an hour and a half in the morning when he's running around the yard. I can come down here after he goes to bed. Those are my pockets,
I was a bit drummer pun there.
Oh, I didn't even get that.
Congrats on being a father.
Thank you.
Just while we're here, the idea of, not to skip ahead too far, but like, we've known each other a long time. From my view, you've always been very, very busy. The idea of starting a family, the idea of having a little one, knowing how much time gets dedicated to music, but also knowing how much sacrifice people seem to make with music. What was the thought process when you found out that the chapters could be turning?
I don't think I've ever been more excited. Like, it felt like the greatest gift that had ever happened to me when I found out we were having a little boy, or just a kid in that sense, because we didn't know he was a boy at that point. But yeah, like there's never a good time, and especially when you tour for a living, like there's never a good time to start a family. But it was a great time, and the silver lining of all of this time at home was that I got the first like 2 years of his life, and I'm greedy for it now.
No, it's awesome to hear again the excitement that's there, because there are a number of musicians out there, and especially people that work in the music industry, where they think like, oh, if you can't dedicate 110% of your time and energy to a project, you're not committed, you're not into it. But the idea of being with a band right now, being with our LPs right now, that's mature, and they have families, and they have partners, and they have lives. Like, how much of an impact does that have on you as a musician?
Oh, it's amazing. It completely changed my perspective, because I was always one of those people being like, if I'm not putting 110% into it, it's not enough. I'm totally how you're describing it. But it's just given me more of a perspective to be like, these guys have been doing this for like nearly 30 years like this. They have it figured out in such a cool way. And it's, I can't model myself after them, but I can definitely take the strong points and the maturity that they have and kind of like throw it into myself and be like, okay, I can handle this. I can go out on the road and come home and have a kid. I can, still be able to practice drums or write songs or produce or all of that, but I can have a life at the same time and not just, have that same song stuck in my head 24/7.
No, I'm glad we actually could chat about this, because the old music industry, that 110% was the thing. And constantly that would be hung over somebody, being like, you basically can't, you need to like not just commit yourself, but like devote yourself to this if you really want to do this, if you really want to do this for real. And the way that the music, in my opinion, the way the music industry has changed, especially the last 5 years, where people can put stuff out independently, bands can kind of carve out their own business model that works for them, so they can find their balance. It can be done.
Yeah, that's the word right there. It's balance. It's like, but I feel like that's in so many businesses and everything too. It's learning how to handle everything. It's crazy.
No, and having again, but with our LPs too, again, being mature and having families, it's like having that understanding around you.
Totally.
Because some bands, some musicians, they don't get it, and it's really hard to have that conversation and go, no, you as you put it, like, you can have a life. Like, music can be part of your life. Music can be a really big part of your life, but
totally,
it's
it will always be a big
of
part.
Your life. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I'm glad we could chat about that, because I think there's a lot of musicians out there that need to hear that.
Totally.
Because it's tough. Because again, as you're saying, and again, knowing you for such a long time and seeing the drive and the hustle. And you're just like, where do you find that 25th hour in the day to do the things that you're doing sometimes?
Yeah, there's never any time for anything. That's the real secret. It's just like you kind of make the time. Like
you figure it out and you get it going. Actually, it's probably a good place to segue.
Sure.
You getting into music. I know you as a drummer. Was drums your first instrument or musical family? How'd you get started?
Yeah, I actually got my drum when I was 4. My parents were in the music industry as well. My dad owned a regional sound company, and my mom did lighting. And my dad, I think he traded like a 24-channel Snake for a blue Sparkle Stewart kit for me when I was 4 years old. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Like, but yeah. So I've been playing pretty much my whole life. That's like 32 years now. But same as everyone else, I played in the basement and started bands in school. I actually named my first punk band after an OLP song, which is like super full circle. It was called Twitch after One Man Army.
Okay.
Yeah, but
trivia there.
Absolutely, right? But yeah, we did the London, Ontario bar circuit and all that stuff. And I had a band with my sister at one point and all that. But I ended up hearing a band called Never Ending White Lights on the radio. And in London, they kind of tested songs on FM 96 before it would go like to the whole national circuit. So I heard The Grace on the radio one day and was like, what the heck is this song? And it was obviously Dallas Green's voice on it too. And I found a contact on Never Ending White Lights website and just cold emailed him. I was like, do you have a band? Like one of those things. And it worked. Like, I don't know how it worked, but it worked. And I put the whole live band together, and I ended up working with him for, I think, 3 or 4 years, a couple album cycles. And because of that, I met the guys in OLP. because of that, I got to like work with, like Melissa Ofterauer from Smashing Pumpkins, and like I got to work with Rain Maida for the first time because of all that, and got to play the Molson Amphitheater for the first time, and all those things that I wanted to do happened because of that band. But it's been one of those things where it's like you meet one person and it leads to another thing, and it's just snowballed for the last, however many years it's been. I don't even want to think about that.
Well, we'll go back to the early years in a second, but no, you touched on a very important point. It's a lot of circles in music, or I guess in probably any industry, they overlap. And It's one of those things you get somebody else and think of that person as a hub of people around them, and that's how you can make friends. And it's funny when you mentioned, sending a cold email. Because that's the Hail Mary in a lot of businesses. It's like you just send 100%. It and hope. But also it's a different era at that point too. Because this is several years ago at that point. But
that's kind of you to say several.
Well, it's a few years ago. But the idea for a lot of musicians, you send a cold email, it doesn't get responded to right away or at all. But if you can get a warm introduction, or if someone's looking for a reference or a referral or something like that, it's like that's how you kind of get in there. And it's just I hear it all. I hear it all the time. People want to just send an email. Oh, and no, they didn't get back to me. Well, there's a conference. Go meet them there. Oh, there's a show. They're probably going to be there. At least get into their line of sight. And who else? And the thing too, it's like Facebook, mutual friends. That's your warm introduction. Hey, can you introduce me to so and so because I'm trying to do what? Like that's how you. That's a whole DearBands live episode.
No, totally. Itself. Well, it's using your resources you have to be able to network in an age like this. It's just being smart about things, Yeah. But I always felt like, it could have been me that emailed Never Ending White Lights. It could have been anyone else. It's just the person that sends the email is going to have a step further than the person that doesn't, And I've done so many auditions where, I haven't got the gig, or, I've done auditions where I got the gig, but it's trying. And if you don't try, you're never going to succeed.
No, you gotta put yourself out there. You gotta take those risks. And
totally.
And it's funny when you mentioned to, send the email and just like the auditions, like you don't get them sometimes. Cause I'm sure you've had auditions where you're like, I think I got this. And for whatever reason, you don't. And
nothing, it's broken my heart.
And it's just like, it's one of those things where just like, that's just what happened today. But there's probably times too where like you felt like you were a lock for something and you did get it. Meanwhile, someone else felt like they really had a good shot at it. But it's like, for whatever, it's just, it's, there's both sides of the fence for that, for sure. I do want to step back for a second because you skimmed through a few things, getting where you are these days. Getting back into, because you got your first drum kit at 4.
Yes.
Can you reach the pedals at 4?
I think I did.
Just no kick. It's just all snare and cymbals.
Probably.
But getting into public school, getting into high school, your first high school band, some of the musicians, is that where you got started with bands?
I think it was actually elementary school. I started playing with other. Yeah. Yep. What was it? I think we did like a Christmas record.
You were recording already?
Somewhere. Yeah. Well, my dad like set us up in his warehouse, and like we just did it live off the floor. I think he did like a 2-track out of his mixer onto a tape, which then we went to EMAC Studios in London and had it transferred to CD, which was super high tech back then.
Huge step in technology.
Huge, right? Well, it took you couldn't just record the CD back then. It's a thing.
No, it definitely was. It's funny. We chatted about needing to record remotely these days. You're like, don't worry, guys. Made a Christmas album, grade 6. I got this. I'll be fine. Right. But as far back with those musicians, at what point, or was there a point when you decided like I really want to play drums full time? And were you surrounded by people that also wanted to do music full time, or is it more just for fun?
I was the only person that I knew that really decided that this is my path. Everyone else was kind of like, this is fun, but I need to do this. I need to make sure the backup plan's there. There's a safety net. And, hindsight, it probably would have been smart to have a safety net and a backup plan. Like, a normal person would. But Luckily, it worked out for me that I am able to, keep a roof over my head and feed my kid, at the very least. But yeah, I think I was probably the last year of high school. It kind of like dawned on me that I had to make a decision on what I wanted to do. So I started to really apply myself in school, and I was actually trying to get into Fanshawe College because I wanted to take the music industry arts program, which didn't pan out, luckily, because I ended up touring. If that would have happened, I probably would have ended up working at a studio, or who knows what my path would have been. But I love studio work. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm half joking. Well, you didn't go to school. Part of it was that Never Ending White Lights you were out with?
I think I joined The Weeknd before that.
Oh, okay.
Like the London band The Weeknd, not the pop artist. But yeah, I got an audition for them, and we ended up